Welcome to the Mom Owned and Operated podcast, the podcast about moms and for moms, where we have candid conversations about running a business, raising a family, and remembering ourselves. I'm your host, Rita Suzanne, a single mom of four, digital strategist, and provider of no-nonsense business strategies and tactics. Hi, this is Mom Owned and Operated. I am Rita Suzanne, and today I have my guest, Annie Hillman, with me. Annie, I'm so excited to chat with you all about knowing your numbers and all of the things. Please tell everyone all about you, your family, and your business.
Hi, yeah, I'm super excited to be here. So my name is Annie. I started my business 4 years ago. Previously, I worked in winery accounting, which was a really fun job, but I knew that I wanted more freedom and flexibility once we had kids. And I have a daughter who's 2, and I started my business before having my daughter, which I always say was like my best decision I've ever made, because all the moms out there who start a business when they already have kids, props to you. You're like amazing. And so I've been running my business for 4 years. We do bookkeeping and CFO services for business owners. We primarily work with online service providers. So this could be operations agencies, this could be social media managers, brand and web designers, anything really that falls into that online service provider bucket.
I love it. So let's just go back to why you felt like it was better to start your business prior to having your daughter.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was working 10 hours a day. I joke very dramatically that I was chained to my desk for 10 hours a day. And I kind of just had this thought of, if I'm going to have children, don't I want to spend time with them and be with them? And I know there's a lot of people out there who love that corporate lifestyle, and that's works for them. For me, I knew that I didn't want that. That's not how I wanted to live my life. So it was kind of a happenstance thing. I started doing a friend of my husband's books just kind of on the side for a little extra side money. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is really fun. I could do this and I could help small business owners. And like I said, my previous job was really interesting and it was fun. But now that I get to serve small business owners and help them, and it's really amazing because I get to, these are the people that need help. And I love that I get to just serve such a diverse clientele. It's not just one business where we're doing one thing and we're, selling bottles of wine, which is great. And it was exciting, but it's so much more fulfilling getting to do what I do now.
So is it that you can kind of problem solve at the same time while you're doing their books and stuff for them?
Yeah, exactly. And it's getting to really, when you work for a huge corporation or a big company, most of the time their CEO knows a lot about finances. And for me, I love that working with small business owners, I get to not only help them make sure their books are on track, make sure everything's up to date for taxes, but also that education piece is really, really fulfilling to me, because once upon a time in college, I wanted to be a teacher. I was planning to teach high school math, which I'm glad I kind of was deterred from doing that, because, high school teenagers are fun, but I think teaching small business owners is so much more fun.
No, I agree. Plus, you get a lot of more freedom and flexibility, and you get to spend time with your daughter, which is the most, fulfilling part, I think, of our businesses as moms. I think that that's the driving force for most of us when we start our businesses, whether it's after or before we have our children. I always tell my clients, when we're even talking about goals, one of the things that they should look at is their numbers every single month to make sure, kind of look at, see what is selling the most for them. And use that as a barometer of what they should kind of focus on and, what's not selling. So what are the reports that they should be looking at? Like, what numbers should they be looking at? Like, what do you like? Let's get into all of that stuff.
I love this question. So I would say, everything you said, I completely agree with. You want to know not only like how much revenue you're bringing in, but what of your different offers is bringing in the most revenue. And let's say, for example, you have one offer that you don't even market that much, but it's kind of bringing in the bulk of your revenue. Then maybe what would happen if you shifted your marketing and said, I'm going to focus on this, and you could bring in even more. So having that level of visibility on what offers are performing well, or maybe there's one that you're pouring so much into and is not doing anything for you. Where could that energy be better spent? So I definitely echo that. The reports, I would say the one report that you're going to want to look at on a monthly basis, no matter what, is your profit and loss. Sometimes it's also called the income statement. And so this is going to give you the meat of the data that you want, and that's going to help you run your business. Of course, to look at your P&L and have an accurate P&L, you have to have your bookkeeping done, whether you have a bookkeeper or you are doing it yourself. You have to do that first, and then you can look at your P&L. And what it's going to show you is first your revenue, all the revenue that you bring in, and depending on your level of clarity or your level of, what level you're breaking it down to, you can see those different offers and how they're performing. And then after your revenue, you're going to see all of your expenses. So this is going to be everything that goes into running your business. So this is going to be subscriptions. Let's say you use Canva for your business and you pay a monthly fee for that. Let's say all of your Stripe fees, if you use Stripe as a payment processor, you take a client out to lunch, that's going to be in there. All of those expenses that it takes to run your business. And then what's left over is going to be your profit. So you have all of your revenue minus your expenses, and you're left with your profit. So this is why that P&L is going to give you so much information, because it's giving you all of that data, and you can look at all of those and kind of scrutinize them and say, I am happy with my revenue. I would like to increase it. I would like to maintain it at that. And you can do the same with your expenses. It's really, if you're not looking at your numbers, it's easy to just kind of fly blindly and just say, okay, I'm doing pretty good. But looking at your P&L and seeing all of your expenses, you can say, on a at least quarterly basis, like to tell my clients to look at their subscriptions, and we do this together, and just say, do I need all of these subscriptions? Am I using them? Am I going to, is there any that I can get rid of? Is there any that I'm paying for something where this one actually already does the same thing, so I can get rid of this one? And so just having that level of visibility on your expenses is huge, and is really going to help you to operate at a level of profit. It's going to help you with your profitability and making sure that it's where it should be and where you want it to be. So that's the biggest report I recommend looking at. There's also one more report called the balance sheet that can give you a lot of data, specifically if you have any credit card debt, or if you have loans, or if you want to know how much you're paying yourself through owner's draws. You're going to find all of that information on the balance sheet. So that's a really good one to look at as well.
Yeah. So it made me think of when you're talking about the profit and loss and comparing the subscriptions and all of that stuff. One question I always get when I'm recording these podcasts is, why am I using Google Meet instead of Zoom, right? Because most people are using Zoom, but a speaking topic that I love to talk about is finding your profit leaks, right? And so one thing that kind of initiated me looking at the comparison between Zoom and Google Meet was I could not update my computer with Zoom. I could not get it to update. So then I started looking at all of, everything else. And then I realized I'm already paying for Google Workplace, which includes Google Meet. Why am I fussing over here with Zoom when Google Meet does the exact same thing? And I was paying double for years and didn't even realize that I was. And so I use that as a prime example of double paying for something that you really don't need to, and for maybe just for the convenience, because everybody else is using Zoom. So why shouldn't I use Zoom?
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And that's something that we go through with our clients pretty often, just to kind of make sure that you're not, like you said, double paying for things that you don't actually need.
I think a lot of times it's for the convenience, right? Or because everybody else is using it. And the same thing happened to me when I first started. Everybody was using Dropbox.
Mhm.
And so I signed up for Dropbox, and I wish I would have just signed up for Drive.
Yeah.
And instead,
I did the same thing. I was like, why am I using Dropbox?
yeah, it was both of them. I ended up, canceling my Dropbox, but I had them for years because several of my clients had Dropbox accounts, and then I just ended up switching over. I mean, so yeah, lessons learned, throughout the years, but I think it's important to have somebody who's going to help you figure out like what things to do and what not to do. So one thing that you mentioned was owner's draw, because I think that oftentimes people feel like that profit of the business, like that's their income, right? And like that's the money that I get. So how do they end up paying themselves? Like,
Yeah.
is that really depend on the structure of their business? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it does depend on the structure of your business. So, when you're kind of starting your business, you're either going to be a sole proprietor or a single member LLC. And this is kind of dependent on what state you live in mostly. And that's because there's varying fees. Like we just previously talked about how we both lived in California. California has pretty insane LLC fees. So for some people, that's not feasible in the beginning. I do recommend, if possible, to get an LLC. Like other states, it's like $50 and it's nothing. So if possible, I recommend getting an LLC in the beginning, but you might be operating as a sole proprietor. So for those two, the way that you pay yourself is called an owner's draw. And it's really simple. You just transfer money from your business account to your personal account. It's not an expense. So make sure that if you're doing your own bookkeeping, that it's categorized as an owner's draw, because it's technically falls under what's called equity. So that's your stake in the company. Once you move up to something like an S corp, which I think is very much a buzzword these days in the online industry, once you move up to the S corp, you're going to pay yourself through a salary, and so this is you could do this yourself and calculate all the taxes. I don't recommend doing that. Use something like Gusto. Their fees are pretty cheap. They calculate all the taxes for you. They pay the taxes on your behalf. It's really straightforward. And there's kind of a threshold. I recommend starting to think about becoming an S corp once you've hit 60 to 70,000 in profit. It's really variable because it depends on where you live. It depends on what your job is, how much you're working. So this is where we bring in a CPA that's going to give you what's called a reasonable compensation number. And they're going to tell you, based on all those factors, this is how much you should be paying yourself. The cool thing is once you reach that level of being an S corp, you are going to be saving in taxes, but you have to make sure you do it at the right moment. If you do it too early, it's not really it doesn't really make sense. And so you're paying more in fees for like the salary, for the payroll fees, for things like, the fact that you have to do a different tax return, all those things. So when you get to that 60 to 70 profit margin is where it kind of starts to make more sense. But a CPA is going to come in at that point and kind of tell you, okay, this is what you need to pay yourself. This is when it makes sense. But it's, like I said, very variable. That's why we recommend not only having like a good bookkeeper on your team, but also having a CPA, because the two of them together are going to really be able to have the most well-rounded financial support for you.
So I feel like I know the answer to this, but what is the biggest thing that holds people back from hiring a bookkeeper?
Yeah, this is a great question. There's a couple things. I think one of them is cost. I think, it's anything in our business. We kind of hesitate to outsource. I know I've done it before. I've now I've seen the other side, and I understand how valuable outsourcing can be. But in the beginning, when you're just starting a business and you're like, okay, I have to monitor every single dollar going in now, I can't really afford to pay a bookkeeper $400 a month. It seems like a lot. So that cost is going to be one thing. But I always like to look at the other side of it. Yes, okay, you are spending, like I said, $300, $400, $500 a month on a bookkeeper. That feels like a lot of money. However, what are you going to do with that time you get back? So I had this experience a couple of weeks ago, and I shared this on my Instagram stories, where I had someone, I was going to replace my front door. I had it in my mind, I'm going to replace my front door. And I got doing the project and I was like, this is a little bit more complicated than I think it could be. I thought it was going to be. Let's just hire it. So we found a handyman. He ended up doing it. I think it was for like $200, $250. During that time, I was on a discovery call with a client, and it ended up turning into a strategy call. And I charged $300 for my strategy calls. So in that time, even though, yes, it was kind of hard to be like, okay, sure, I'll pay him $200, $250 to fix my door for me, I ended up making money because I spent that time instead on my business. Mm-hmm. And this is so common. If you are using, let's say, 3 to 4 hours, maybe more of your month to do your books, it doesn't feel like that much time when you're in it. But would you rather be spending it elsewhere? Would you rather be spending it selling, working on that new project you have coming up, or even just at the park with your kids because that's what you feel like doing that day? So I know that the cost can seem scary, as with any time you outsource something. But I like to look at the other side of it. What do you get back?
But it's also an expense. And I think that oftentimes, like, people don't have enough expenses to offset their income. And so they need to also think about that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we have a lot of resources for people who are in the beginning and are DIYing, because I will never look down upon someone who wants to DIY their books. I think that there's a time and a place, just like there was a time and a place when I did my own social media, and now I don't. There's a time and a place. And I think that if you're making the effort to do it, you put a monthly money meeting on your calendar every month, like, go you, because you're making the effort to get it done. And that's why it's really big for me, not only to structure our like free content to help educate those people who want to DIY, but also to provide resources for people who want to, because we completely understand it's not always, whether you want to or not, can sometimes be irrelevant when it comes to outsourcing. It's whether you actually can afford it. And so if you are able to kind of do it for yourself and do it on your own and have the resources to be able to do it well, then that's great. And I will never say no to that, or never think that that's a bad idea, as long as you're doing it.
Yeah. The thing I was thinking was that I think oftentimes people are so embarrassed of the state of their current books that they don't want somebody to see it.
Yeah. And that's so valid, honestly. But that's why we do what we do. We're never here to judge. We're never here to look down upon someone, like I said, who's doing it themselves, because you're doing the best that you can. You're, as a business owner, you have 5 million things on your plate. You're wearing all the different hats. If you don't do it like as well, we don't expect you to do it as well as a bookkeeper would. But as long as you have some visibility, because it's helping you as well to see your numbers. Not only is it, we'll meet you where you're at, basically. Is if you haven't touched them ever, that's okay. We'll come in and we'll start from scratch. If you've been doing it and you're not really sure what you're doing, every time we start working with a client, we do a comprehensive review that kind of goes back and says, like, okay, reviews everything that you've done, or if you have a previous bookkeeper, what they've done, just to kind of make sure we're starting off on the right foot. So we're just here to meet you where you're at, no matter where that is in your business, whether that's wanting to DIY and just needing help, or wanting to move forward with monthly bookkeeping and ready to start that.
Yeah. And you have some free resources for those who still want to actually do it themselves.
Yeah,
until they're ready. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing that I've been asking recently is all about kind of diving into how, as a mom business, we're able to, like, what software or tools are you using in your business that are making it easier for you? Is it a project management system? Is it some kind of organization thing? Like, what are you using that you could share with everyone?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a couple that I am in love with, obsessed with. The first one is Dipsado. I just love it for onboarding. I originally I had someone set up my Dipsado for me, and originally I just wanted to get kind of streamline my onboarding process. But now that I'm in it and I've been using it, it's so robust that there's so much you can do. I now do my invoicing in there. I do Like when I send emails to a client, it's a lot of them are through there. So that's really streamlined things and saved me a lot of time. And the automations, like the fact that, it automatically sends reminders and stuff is huge. I don't have to think about that. Very much love Dubsado. And then along with that is my CRM, and I use ClickUp. It's kind of like my life now. It's just in ClickUp. But the first thing I do when I sit down on my computer is I go to my ClickUp and I say, okay, this is what I need to do today. And that's helped me as well, because I'm not just kind of sitting down and saying, oh, well, maybe I'll do this. Oh, I kind of want to work on this. It gives me a plan. And each week I spend some time on Mondays where I set out, okay, this is what I'm going to do each day. So those two tools have been huge in helping me to just kind of, because as moms, we're just pulled in a million different directions and things come up and, oh my gosh, the baby's sick today. I can't do any of the work that I was planning to do. Okay, let me just go into ClickUp real quick and shuffle things around so that I know that, okay, this is what I can expect the rest of the week. So those two have been huge for helping me manage that.
Yeah, I find that a lot of times clients of mine are very reactive in the way that they work. And so like planning things out and getting things prepared is a lot better versus just like just responding to things and just reacting as they happen. Just working ahead will save you a lot more stress and pressure. And I heard this analogy and I thought that it was just so profound. And I shared it with somebody a couple of weeks ago. And I think it fits in here as well, where you can either work like the cow or you can work like the lion. And I don't know if have you heard that before?
I haven't.
Okay. So the cow is constantly grazing, right? They're just constantly grazing. And the lion, the way that they are looking to feed is they're just lying in wait, right? And then when it's time to hunt, they're ready to pounce. And so instead, what we should do, instead of like constantly grazing, constantly working, which then burns us out, is then we should take that time, take that space to kind of lie in wait, rest, and then we'll be ready when it's time to pounce, right? We'll effectively be able to have that energy for that burst to go.
Yeah,
And
I love that.
yeah, I often feel like, our mentality is like the grazing, the constant. And so I keep telling myself, don't be the cow, right?
I need that on a Post-it note on my computer. I like that.
I know. I'm like, first of all, this analogy works multiple ways, but
yeah, exactly.
but yeah, I think that's great. So let's move on to one of my other questions is what are you currently listening to or reading at the moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I I have a bad habit of reading like 4 books at a time. I've been really getting into like thrillers. So I'm reading this one called The Housemaid. And then I'm reading a book called How to Talk So Your Little Kids Will Listen, or I think it's something along the lines of that. And then as far as like, I like to have like a fiction, a parenting book, and a business book. And so as far as like the business book I'm reading right now is called Boundaries. It's like, I think it's just called Boundaries. It has like a pencil on the cover. I can't remember who wrote it. And it's not specifically just business book, but it definitely applies to both business and life. And all 3 of them, I feel like I just want to read all day. I have to remind myself that I actually have to do other things too.
I love it. So one of the reasons why I started this podcast was because I was like going through this traumatic time in my life, and I could not for the life of me understand how other moms were able to like do all the things because I was failing so epically, right? And I needed to know how they were able to raise their families and run their businesses, but also remember themselves. And so I never leave an episode without asking other moms, like, how are you taking care of yourself? Like, what are you doing just for you?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because I feel like as moms, it kind of falls to the back burner. We worry about taking care of about everyone else, putting out the fires, working on our business. So I definitely think it's something that it's a constant work in progress for me. And I think I have to remind myself and give myself grace about that, because it's not going to be perfect every day. There's some days where I don't do the things that I need to do to take care of myself, but something I've been prioritizing is actually reading. I think I tend to get into a spot where everything has to be productive. I have to be productive 24/7. Even if I'm resting, my rest has to be productive. And it's a horrible place to be in. But I think as moms, because we are pulled in so many different directions, it's so common for us to feel this way. So getting back into reading more fiction has really been just like, it's just been my time to just kind of do what I want to do and do something fun, and reminding myself that it doesn't have to always be productive. The other thing that I've been prioritizing lately is just making sure that I'm getting my movement and my workouts in throughout the week. I love, it's one of my favorite things to do is work out and move my body. And I think a lot of times it falls to the back burner because it's like, oh, I don't need to do it. I could work on this project that I'm working on. I could, do X, Y, Z. So the last couple of months, I've been really making sure that time is in my calendar. It's blocked off, and I don't dip into it unless it's an absolute emergency. And that has given me, it's so interesting because I feel like once we do those things for ourselves that we need to do, we feel so much better about everything else. We feel like that thing that was daunting in the back of our head, it's actually manageable. We can do it. And because I, took 45 minutes to get a workout in, I have all those endorphins running through me, and I feel like I can do all the things that I need to do, and it's not just scary and daunting anymore.
Yeah. And it's definitely a transition period for you because your daughter is so young. And so I just would say, just give yourself a little bit of grace because you're still in that moment of, just kind of getting things together. One thing that I remember when my kids were younger that I implemented right away, and I used to do because it made me feel accomplished no matter what, was the Miracle Morning. And I don't know if you've heard of it, but that helped me, even though it's just 5 minutes of exercise. It was like doing some kind of quick Tabata or something, what I mean? Something fast. Then if I wasn't able to do a full workout, then I felt like, okay, at least I did that. At least I journaled. At least I meditated. At least I did something, so I want to get back into that practice. It's just really hard for me now because of just the space I'm in at the moment. But I think that for some people, I think it's a great practice if they can incorporate it, at their time.
I completely agree.
Yeah. So, where can everyone find you? Where are you at online? Where do you hang out?
So my website is 1428financial.com. On Instagram, we are 1428financial, and that's 1428, not spelled out, just the numbers. Instagram is where we're most active, but we also kind of hang out a little bit on Pinterest, LinkedIn, those things. But I'm still learning LinkedIn. It's new to me, so I'm not exactly up to date on that one, but definitely Instagram. We share a lot. Like I said, we share a lot of free content on there that's really educational and just helpful, wherever you are at in your finance journey.
Perfect. And then they can find all of the free gifts and stuff on your website, and all of the links will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for being a guest. It's been amazing.
Yeah, this was such a fun conversation.
And there you have it. I want to encourage you to remember that being a mom who runs her own business is not easy. We all struggle, but just keep moving forward and don't forget to make time for yourself. As moms, we are usually the first thing to go to the bottom of the list. If your business is overwhelming you and you need real solutions, not just some sugar-coated suggestions, apply to work with me at ritasuzanne.com/apply.